Susan is white. The kids that are playing in this neighborhood are black. So Susan makes a comment to the kids that this is not the Underground Railroad. When I tell you, my mouth dropped open. I'm sure we've all had that neighbor who just couldn't get on board with the program, whether it was a neighborhood program or just the program of life in general, that when you live with other people, you have to have a high level of patience, a high level of tolerance, and dare I say it, a high level of self-control, because people are going to do things that you don't like, but that doesn't mean you get to take matters into your own hands. And that does not mean you get to resort to violence and take someone's life. And that's exactly what happened in this Netflix documentary called The Perfect Neighbor with this woman, Susan Lorincz, who we are going to talk about today. Now, I'm not going to go through every single detail of what happened with this lady because number one, it gets very repetitive. And number two, I don't think that's a good use of our time. If you want to watch the documentary, I don't want to take away the element of surprise for the crazy things this woman says and does and just the back and forth that the police had to have with her. Go watch it for yourself if you want to. I'm going to give a brief summary of what happened. I'm going to talk about instead why people need to have tolerance, why people need to understand that people are on edge around the world. They have so many things going on. And if you can't be that decent human being that just lets things go, that just understands people, that tries to be as decent of a neighbor as you can be, then we're going to have a lot more situations like this. And I don't wish that upon anybody, but the idea of this documentary, it just baffles you how something that could have been remediated in so many other ways ends up being this tragedy for this family. And this woman, I don't understand her. I really don't. So let's just get into what happened. So in early 2021, we have this 60-year-old named Susan Lorincz. She is a white woman who lives in Ocala, Florida, in this neighborhood where there's a lot of kids. And she doesn't like that. She cannot tolerate kids because the sound of them playing and the joy of children being children outside is unacceptable for her. And she's going to call the police every chance that she gets. What I don't understand is why she herself wasn't arrested earlier on for wasting police resources and their time. The Marion County Police Department should have been arrested her because all she does is picks up her phone and calls the police and say, kids are outside playing and they're being loud and unruly and blah, 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 blah. And they keep coming out there to try to quell the situation. But everyone in the neighborhood is saying like she's the only one with this problem. And that begs the question of why didn't Susan move? I'm not saying it's easy to move. I'm not saying it's the fair thing to do because you have a right to live there just like they do. But if this neighborhood is full of kids who like to play outside, it's much easier for you, if you're renting especially, which she was, to get up and move or find some other solution than to continue to harass these kids every chance you get. And by harass, I mean videotaping them when they're playing outside, making false allegations like saying that they're trying to put a dog in your pickup truck when... Y'all, when you watch this documentary, you're going to realize like Susan has a problem with perception, with time, with the truth. She clearly has some issues with being honest with herself and being honest with others because she likes to play the victim herself. So she saw herself as a victim in the situation where these kids are outside playing, she's being bothered, and she's not going to stand for it. So she calls the Marion police all the time and they never arrested. I would have been like, listen here, ma'am, call us one more time and you are the one that's going to be arrested. But they didn't do that. So like I said, in early 2021, we have her making repeated phone calls to the police. And the documentary opens up with a particular scene where the police show up and Susan is claiming that someone, I think a G.K. Owens, who we'll talk a little bit more about in this video, that's the whole point of the documentary, threw a no trespassing sign at her. Everybody who was around said no, she did not throw it at her. Obviously with an altercation, they were going back and forth. The sign was thrown and it was in her direction and she claims that it was thrown at her, but that's not what happened. So she's saying that that's what happened and the police are like, okay, yeah, sure. Please, everybody try to stay on your side as best as you can. But the whole idea of what side is whose even is a question to be asked because Susan is renting from this place. The landlord himself in the documentary says, no, Susan has a very small property that's considered hers, but everything else is really considered public property that the kids can play on. So the idea that she would even try to say, you cannot trespass. I think she bought the no trespassing sign herself and put it somewhere. Like, the idea that she was trying to claim rights to a space that was not hers shows you where her mental state is and how much she really wanted to keep these kids away. But when you live in such close proximity to people, you can't always control the things that they do. I myself right now have a neighbor upstairs who has two big dogs. And every morning when they want to go out for a walk, I hear them just barking and scraping the floor because they want to get out. And their owners, I think, are too lazy. And I understand they're tired, they're sleeping, they don't want to get up and have to walk them. Or in the evening when they're super excited and have all that energy that they have to get out before they go to bed, I hear them upstairs. I've gone up there one time and one time only to say, hey, it's really early. I have a 3-year-old. Can you just try to blah, blah, blah? And they said, we'll do our best. Da, da, da. Didn't happen. The dogs are dogs. They cannot control the dogs. And I understand that. So I just live with it. I understand that it's not an all day, everyday thing. So when it does happen, I am tolerant of it and I just let it go. Now, I'm on the other end of that where my neighbor downstairs doesn't seem to understand that I have a 3-year-old and I can't control my 3-year-old all the time. So the fact that she walks and stomps everywhere, he doesn't like it. And he comes upstairs every 2 days to tell me that I need to keep it down and that he can't do whatever he needs to do because my daughter is making too much noise. So I'm on both ends of this. And that's why I think I fully understand when you live, first of all, in a place that's not your own, you're not going to have the opportunity and the privilege and the luxury of being able to dictate what happens. Kids are going to be kids. They're going to do what they do. Dogs are dogs, animals, they're going to do what they do. So if you're going to rent, if you're not going to have your own place, a mansion in the middle of nowhere where you have no neighbors or your nearest neighbor is a mile away, you don't get to have the luxury of dictating everything that happens. And Susan, she seemed to have a hard time understanding this. Susan could not understand why all these neighborhood kids wanted to play outside and make noise. As if that's not what kids do. Kids make noise. That's just what they do. So yeah, Susan had a hard time understanding that, but I really wanted to hone in on something that Susan did early on in this documentary. And it was, so like I mentioned, maybe I didn't mention it, but either way, see, Susan is white. The kids that are playing in this neighborhood are black. So Susan makes a comment to the kids that this is not the Underground Railroad. When I tell you, my mouth dropped open. What the hell? This woman is not okay. She's unhinged, and we're going to see more of that unhingedness later on in the documentary. But she clearly has a hatred for these kids. She clearly has a hatred for life itself. She's alone. She has no kids. It doesn't seem like she has family, at least that's nearby, because all we see is Susan being Susan. Susan having too much time on her hands. Susan being a nuisance. Susan being annoying. She's the only one in the neighborhood of all these kids who calls the police when she hears something she doesn't like, when she sees something she doesn't like. And by the way, when she sees something that she doesn't like, she also will pull out her phone and record these kids. I would have sued her. If I was a parent and I knew she had pictures or videos of my kid on her phone, you got to do something about that because that's just unacceptable. Susan had a lot of time on her hands, and we're soon going to find out just how much time on her hands she had and what it led to, unfortunately. Okay, so now I'm going to jump to the day in question. Well, not in question anymore because it's been decided in court, but the fateful day that everything went down and the culmination of all the bickering, all the fighting, all the phone calls to the police came to a head. And this was June 2nd, 2023. So Ajike Owens is one of the moms, one of the parents who lives on the street with Susan. And Ajike has 4 kids, 2 older boys, I think a girl and maybe a boy at last. But either way, we know for sure she has 2 older boys. And the 2 older boys were outside playing in a part of the property that Susan would deem either her responsibility or her delusional right to determine whether people should be playing there or not. And they have a pair of skates. Susan somehow gets out of her home and comes and she throws those skates at the little boys. So the little boys get into it with her and they say, I'm going to tell my mom. And Susan goes, yeah, go ahead and tell your mom and actually go get your mom. So Ajike, being the mama bear that she is, she goes over to confront Susan on why she did that to her kids, why she keeps harassing her kids, yada, yada, yada. Susan decides to call 911 and say that AJ is at her door, and then she's waiting for 911. We'll get back to that later. She's waiting for 911, and then all of a sudden, there's gunshots. Maybe there's one gunshot, but there's a gunshot. At a minimum, one gunshot. I forget, honestly, because the documentary was dark. It was all body cam footage. It was a lot going on. But there's a gunshot, and the police, as they're pulling up from Susan's initial call, there's everybody in the neighborhood outside saying, somebody's been shot. Please come. We're right here. We're right here. Like, they're flagging the police down. So the police come up, and they see that AJ is on the floor. She's been shot, and Susan is the one who pulled the trigger. So Susan Lorincz says that she was in fear of her life, and that's why she pulled the trigger. And unfortunately, AJ Owens, GK Owens, lost her life that night. And I have to say, the footage of AJ's husband or partner, I'm not sure if it was her husband, but AJ, the kid's father, right? So AJ has 4 kids with this man, and the footage of him telling the kids that their mother did not make it, it was so heartbreaking. They were so sad. That's news that no parent should ever have to deliver. And I'm not the most emotional person, but seeing it even made me feel like, oh my God, this is just so horrible. Like, this is so sad. One of the little boys, they ask him like, are you okay? And he's like, no, my heart is broken. Oh, that was just a lot. That was like a punch to the gut. Like, no child should ever have to go through that. And I feel so sorry for these kids. And I feel bad that even like this documentary, it feels like it's too much. Like, it's the body cam footage. So we get to see everything. At some point, we get to see AJ on the ground as they're delivering medical aid to her. We see the father telling the kids about their mother being lost. That moment is forever cemented in these kids' head, because it's one thing to have to experience it. It's another thing for it to be out there on footage. Okay, so we get through that and we collect ourselves, and now it's June 6th, I believe. No, it's June 7th that Susan Lorincz is arrested for the shooting and the no longer living, the unaliving of GK Owens. The footage of her being interrogated is very interesting because she continues to say that she was in fear of her life, that GK was pounding on the door really bad, and she felt like the walls were shaking, the mirror on the walls were shaking, the pictures on the wall were shaking. Like, she was so in fear of her life that she grabbed her and she shot through the door, and that's how GK lost her life. And the police is trying to understand from her, like, okay, the timeline of events. And one thing that I love about detectives is they're not going to let little details slip by. Like, you don't get to just say a statement and like just move past it like that. No, they're going to come back to it, and they're going to remember something else that you said that doesn't align with that, and they're going to pinpoint it. So during her interrogation or investigation or whatever you want to call it, they ask her, okay, so you initially called the police when a GK came to your house, right? And she goes, yeah. You called the police a second time to say that you had fired your firearm and you shot her. Like, you shot her. And she's like, yeah. So they're like, well, approximately how long was she pounding on your door before you decided to make that shot? And, no, like 5 to 10 minutes. Like, she said something that just didn't make sense. They were like, okay, so no one would be standing at a door pounding for like 10 minutes. No. So the police informed her the first time that you called the police to say that she was at your door was 8:54 p.m. And I'm looking at my notes because I want to make sure I get that right. Like, they got her right here. They got her real good right here. And I love when detectives do their job. So the first 911 call was at 8:54 p.m. The call started. The call disconnected at 8:59 p.m. and deputies are on their way once the call is disconnected. So the second call saying that she shot a GK was at 9:02 p.m. If you missed that, let me make it clear for you. 8:59 p.m. she hangs up the phone. At 9:02 she calls again to say that she had shot. 2 minutes after she hung up. 2 minutes. So this lady wants us to believe that in those 2 minutes, which in her mind was 10 minutes or 5 minutes, whatever. All of this went down where she was banging on the door so bad that she feared for her life. And then mind you, she also mentioned that she couldn't find her phone, which yes, you could, because every single time something's wrong, you are able to find your phone. And I'm not saying because every single time she found her phone that this time she should. No, I'm saying she did find her phone. She did not know where her phone was. She knew where her phone was because she used it to call the police 2 minutes in between her shooting a GK. Do you guys get what I'm saying? And so she's talking about, no, I thought a GK said, and I put thought in my notes here in capital letters because she said, I thought she said, I'm going to kill you. There's a lot in this interrogation of her saying she thought something happened. She thought AJ said something. She thought this. She thought that. This woman is out of control. So the detectives are not stepping off her neck. No, they're telling her like, you did not wait for the detectives, the deputies, whoever, the sheriff to come up and take care of the situation. You took the situation into your own hands and you decided to shoot this lady because you felt like it. That's really what it is. You decided to do that and you don't even remember clearly whether she said, I'm going to kill you or not. You're just saying that. Long story short, they charge her with manslaughter and they let her know that the reason why we're doing that is because you called us. And then 2 minutes after we were supposed to be on the way, you unalive somebody. I have to say she barely flinches when they say they're going to charge her with manslaughter, but she definitely flinched when they tell her it's time to arrest you. Cause she's like, no. No, 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 no. You will not arrest me. You will not take me down. You will not search me. You will not book me. She doesn't want to have any of it. And I'm just sitting here wondering, like, what kind of privilege do you have, little lady, little Miss Susie, that you can tell these officers whether or not they can arrest you? She's like, I just can't. I just can't. Well, you can and you will. And eventually they end up arresting her. But before they do, they give her the opportunity to write a letter to GK's children, expressing either her remorse or any kind of responsibility for what she has done. She picks up the notepad and the pen. She starts to write a letter. And I think in the middle of it, she decided, whatever, I don't care. I don't care, because she doesn't finish the letter. And when the officers come in the room after they arrest her and they read the letter, it was some half-assed note about how she's sorry she killed them, but she was scared for her life. And the mom said she was going to, it had nothing to do with taking accountability. But there's one particular instance during her interrogation that I wanted to focus on in this video. She said, regarding whether she called those kids the N-word, she says, oh, I gotta find my note. I have to find it, because she said, if I did, let it go, I'm sorry. She said, let it go, I'm sorry. If I did, so what? She follows it up by saying that she always thought the N-word means something that's dirty or unlawful. Please just put this lady under the jail. Please put this. That's all I'm thinking throughout the entire documentary, because she clearly has no ability to take accountability for her behavior. She sees nothing wrong with her behavior. She thinks that her calling the police repeatedly on these kids that are playing outside is acceptable. And lo and behold, and in the words of Jessie Wu, behold and lo, she searched self-defense on her computer. She looked up the Florida stand your ground law. Now, they never really made it clear. I think it was after. She says it was after, when she went on Facebook and she saw how everybody was talking about what was going on, and she researched stand your ground. I am going to say she looked it up before, because she always knew she wanted to once and for all put an end to all this. And she thought that if she put one of those neighbors down, or one of those neighbors' kids down, and she used the Florida stand your ground law, that the other neighbors would then finally give her peace. I think that's what she did. And I think that she thought she was going to get away with it, but she didn't, because they ended up charging her with manslaughter. And some people are going to be upset with that. They're going to say, like, why didn't they charge her with the big M? Well, manslaughter, to be able to prove intent, is something that's very, very hard to do in court. Proving intent is not easy, okay? It's like, you have to get inside somebody's mind, and sometimes there has to be circumstantial evidence to show, like, okay, this correlates with what the person was thinking, and that's not always easy to do, especially in a situation like this that escalated very, very quickly. So it would be hard to prove that she had the intent to do this. But anyways, I'm happy with the manslaughter charge. And so they charge her with the manslaughter charge. She doesn't write the full letter. She writes a half-assed letter. And eventually they go through trial and they judge her. Like, the jury finds her guilty in less than 2 hours. And you have to understand, 2 hours is nothing, because they have to get in there. They have to identify who the foreperson is going to be. They have to go through the rules of deliberation, go through the instructions of deliberation, and then they start deliberating. So honestly, that could have happened in the first hour, and then in the last hour, they decide she was guilty, or even beyond the first hour. And then like within 30 minutes, they're like, yeah, put this lady under the jail where she belongs. So they finally find her guilty of manslaughter. And then in November of 2024, she is sentenced to 25 years in prison. I have to say a lot of things. She looked disheveled. She looked horrible, and she lost a lot of weight by the time her trial started, probably from the stress of being labeled what she is: a racist, a hateful person, I can't say the M word, a manslaughterer. Yeah, I can say that. She's a horrible person, and I'm so glad that she was sentenced to the 25 years, because she doesn't need to see the light of day ever again. So my thoughts overall on this documentary: it was very sad. It was heartbreaking to see those marches and the pleas for help by the community and Ajike's family. Because when this happened, there were days, I think, that Susan was just running around, walking and doing her thing and not arrested. And even then, honestly, the police had to escort her to her home every time she had to be there. They had to be there when she was leaving her home, because the neighborhood was ready to put they were ready to put fist to face. They were not stepping off of Susan. They were letting her know, you're going down for this, and we're not going to stand and let anything else happen besides that. And so it was very, very emotional, very sad. Ajike was loved. She leaves 4 children behind, and that's so, so, so hard. And right before I sat down to record this, I saw an article that said that since the documentary released on Netflix, that there was a GoFundMe and over $500,000 was raised for her children. That's never going to bring their mom back, but I think it's such a good outpouring of the community and an outpouring of love and compassion and support for her family. Something that I wish Susan Lorincz would have shown for her neighbors who have kids. If you have kids, you know it's very hard to manage everything that's going on in their lives and in your life as well. It's hard to just keep them bottled up in the home. So you have to let them have some sort of extracurricular activity. Playing outside is one of them. And to know that these kids have to pay the price of losing their mom for the rest of their lives is so, 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 so sad, because they had an intolerant neighbor. They had a neighbor who couldn't see past her own rage, who couldn't see past her own hatefulness, and she decided to take their mom away. One thing that stuck out to me during the trial was when they brought the door, Susan's door, to trial, and they showed that the only damage to the door was the bullet hole. Can you imagine? It's a metal door. It's bolted in. It's got all these layers of security. And Susan thought that the stand your ground law, which is essentially a self-defense law, was going to stand to say that she felt so threatened that the other woman, the other person behind this metal door that's bolted in, was going to do something to her. So she had to pull her weapon out and shoot through the door. She is out of control. She's out of control. And I'm so glad that the jury saw right through it. And she's spending a very, very, very long time behind bars. Susan was a hateful, hateful neighbor. She really did not want to see these kids have fun. Any sound of laughter, of joy, was a ping to her heart that she could not handle. And she wasn't going to be satisfied with calling the police. She wasn't going to be satisfied with getting deputies out there every 2 seconds. She wasn't going to be satisfied with anything. She was only going to be satisfied when she did permanent damage to those people, because she was bitter, she was angry, and she was hateful. So that's what I have to say on the whole perfect neighbor drama. I hate that Netflix even gave it that name, because what? And I know that it's because Susan said it. She thought she was a perfect neighbor. She thought a lot of things, and she was dead wrong. And she was wrong about being the perfect neighbor, because she has caused irreversible damage on the lives of so many. And I'm glad that the documentary is out so we can see her ugly behavior right on screen. No editing, no nothing, just on body cam. Yeah, Susan. That's the legacy you're going to leave behind. You hateful. I'm not going to say that. Thank you guys for tuning in and watching. I'm just going to go ahead and end it right here. I hope you guys have a good rest of the day, whichever day you're watching this, and I will see you guys in the next one.